How to read and understand your homeowner's policy. That's today's video. We're going to talk about what you need to look for, how to read it. A lot of people don't really have an idea and are afraid to look at the insurance policy, especially your homeowners. So I'm here to take that pain away. My name's Mike Keeler. I'm a licensed public adjuster in the state of Florida. If you have any questions, need help with a claim, this is how you can get a hold of me. So we're briefly going to be taking a look at different policies, more so the ones popular in Florida. Obviously right now, Citizens would be at the top of that list with over 1 million policies. Take a look at a company called Universal and maybe a couple others. And we'll briefly run through. The layout might be a little bit different, but at the end of the day, they're all the same and they all want to screw you. So usually the way I take a look at it, I start with the endorsements. And we're going to go through an example of this. Citizens, you don't find too many endorsements because of the simple fact that it's a state-run policy. So we won't start there. We'll start with a different company because of the lack of endorsements that Citizens has. In other words, you can't buy anything to enhance your policy with Citizens. Normally, endorsements either add to coverage or they actually can take away coverage. So we won't use Citizens for an endorsement, but I will show you another policy. Okay, so this is a progressive policy. And I'm going to make certain notes here just to kind of guide us along the way. So when I'm looking at things, obviously you start with the deck page. That's a whole nother video. I'm going to put a link in the video or in the description of this YouTube because I have another one on how to read and understand your declaration. So this is all the declaration page. And then here's what you talk about. See, other coverages and endorsements. So these usually add on certain coverages or take away. So for instance, you got to read what the hurricane deductible endorsement is. Now see, this has something interesting when I take a look at it. Windstorm, exterior paint, or waterproofing exclusion. So remember that. I'll take a look at it. Is there anything else? Okay, here's something else. We see a water damage exclusion and limited water damage coverage. All right. Remember, guys, never, ever, if you can find it, you never want a limited water damage coverage policy, and you definitely do not want an exclusion. So with an exclusion, any type of water damage, you're not covered. They won't pay a penny. Limited water damage, you only have $10,000. All right, so immediately I know we're going to take a look at this one, and then also we'll take a look at this one. So I go all the way back to the policy, and then I just work my way up and try to find these. All right. So here's the limited water damage. So sometimes, depending on the way it's written, there's a possibility we can get around it. All right. In this case, if it happened to be a cast iron, they cover their butt because they include the cost of tearing out, which what we call indirect damages. So let's move on. Here's the windstorm, exterior paint, or waterproofing exclusion. Okay, so you got to read this. So this exclusion, any type of windstorm or hail, windstorm during a hurricane. So if you suffered some exterior nicks, dings from a hurricane, like a lot of people from Hurricane Ian on the west coast of Florida, a lot of people have to have their houses repainted and waterproof from the hurricane causing cracks, right? So then they go on to describe what a hurricane is. So sometimes this may not be a big deal. It could present to be a big deal. if you're in some coastal water areas very close to the coast, because that tends to bring upon a lot of salt, a lot of sand, other debris that can cause these microchips to your house and cause issues with the paint. So, this isn't a good endorsement. Either is the water damage. So, here's the water damage exclusion. They go through everything. So all in all, that's essentially what I do. And then we'll go through the next part. This is how I read a policy. But of course, my profession is going to be different for yours. But I still would recommend that you take a look first and foremost at the endorsements. I think it's good to start here. Now, your endorsements could be potentially at the end of your policy. I see some policies where things are kind of all over the place, but more than likely it will be towards the front of the policy shortly after the declaration page, if not immediately after the declaration page. Okay, if you like my videos, please, everyone you watch, give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel. Okay, so the meat and potatoes of a policy is going to be coming up, and it starts with the perils insured against. Okay, perils basically is the loss, right? So it's the cause of loss. Lightning, wind, we'll cover that in a minute. Okay, so let's talk about the perils insured against. HO3 with Citizens. It's the most popular type. 90%, 95% of people have an HO3 if you have a home. Now, the one thing I just want to bring your attention to, because this all starts off at the beginning of a policy with definitions. And the one sometimes we tend to utilize is, what is the insured? Who is the insured? All right. How do you define that? How does a policy define it? Well, you and your residents of your household, your relatives, other persons under the age of 21, a student, if they're under 24, all right? Sometimes this comes up when there's a death in a family. And maybe it's a relative that lives in California. Maybe it's a relative that lives in Georgia, but doesn't actually live at the house in Florida. So based on a college student being away, we would have to look at how the policy defines the insured. Do they come home and live at home? Things of that nature. So we tend to utilize that more than anything else. We don't really utilize employee electronic transmittal. So as you can see, that tends to be probably the most common definition that we have to go back and look at. I'm going to touch on a few different things. How the dwelling obviously is your resident premises, and they cover material and supplies located or next to your home resident premises. If it's used for constructing or altering or repairing your home. Other structures obviously has to be set apart, meaning not connected to your house. Sheds, boat docks, garages, things of that nature. Won't go into some of this other stuff. The special limits of liability very quickly. Here you talk about other features of your policy, right? $2,000 or $1,000 for banknotes and stamps and trading cards, and $200 for money, and $2,000 for guns, and so on and so forth. $1,000 for jewelry if you don't have it scheduled. Scheduled meaning you specifically have a wedding ring that you put for an additional amount of money as far as insurance. I won't talk about this. The additional coverages. This is just a little bit additional. For instance, with tree shrubs, with Hurricane Ian, a lot of people weren't getting covered because Citizens doesn't even pay for it. They will pay for your tree shrubs or plants if it's caused by fire, lightning, explosion, riot, aircraft. But no more than $500 of this limit may be available for any one tree, shrub, or plant. Loss assessment. You live in a condo. or homeowners association. Most policies I see $2,000 to $3,000. They're going to pay $1,000. Limit is most they will pay. Let's get into perils insured against. So here we go. If we start talking about, this is similar to sinkhole. I won't get into this too much. There's 4 conditions that will meet on whether it's catastrophic ground cover collapse or basically sinkhole, right? So, and you'll see that a lot of these, as far as the perils insured against, are going to be the same perils as what you'll see underneath personal property. So they all kind of flow together. So we'll start here. So let's see, fire, lightning, windstorm, or hail, that's covered. Explosion, riot, these are most common. These are what you see in every homeowner's policy. HO3. This is nothing unusual. Falling objects, theft, vandalism, accidental discharge of overflow water or steam. However, as I previously mentioned, with citizens, there's a $10,000 limit on that. All right, freezing, sudden accidental tearing apart, cracking, bulging. Sudden accidental damage from basically a surge, an electrical surge. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the perils insured against. So as you notice, a lot of people will call in their roof claim and say it's from rain. Rain is not a covered peril. It has to be from, for your roof, it has to be from wind, lightning, fire, hail, right? This is all for your roof. No rain. Rain is not covered. Please don't ever mention rain. Please. So let's get into the exclusions. As I mentioned, next section we're going to cover is the exclusions. We'll go through this pretty quickly. Okay, let's cover the exclusions part. Pretty quickly, we could get through this. Most of these are the same with every policy. All right. They talk about earth movement, settlement. So as I point here, if you have some cracks on the outside of your house, citizens or a lot of other companies are going to relate it to just the settling of your building. Water damage, Hurricane Ian, a lot of people had water damage, right? Hence the reason why you need a flood policy. So flood, storm surge, it's excluded from every policy. Every homeowner's policy. They don't cover it. So you'll see here some other ones, power failure, neglect, war, constant or repeated seepage or leakage. People with water claims. This is also known as long-term leak, a leak that had been there for a while. All right? Constant, repeated seepage or leakage. Long-term leak. That's why it's very important when you find a leak. Have a plumber fix it, call and get some help for that claim. They talk about existing damage. So nothing really surprising, pretty run-of-the-mill. But these exclusions, let me make this comment. This isn't the only exclusions on the policy. You're going to find different areas that they will say there's a certain limit. It's excluded. That's where sometimes you've really got to know how to look through this policy. I'm just giving you the very driver's education 101 when you're trying to get your license, just to guide you. I don't want to get too complicated into this stuff. But the next section kind of covers that we'll talk about. So you'll notice that a lot of policies may contain a special provision. So if you're in Florida, it will have special provisions, Florida. Other states will have special provisions, Colorado, Georgia. So all special provisions is another way for them to limit what they have to pay you for your claim. If it's not bad enough trying to get your claim paid, they keep on throwing more and more surprises at you to try and get out of paying the claim. It's unbelievable. Okay, so let's take a look at this special provision gibberish going on. So, American Integrity, one of the worst policies you can have. Here's some of the worst policies you can buy in Florida. If you buy this policy, sometimes you may not have any options, but these policies are absolutely garbage. American Integrity is one of the worst policies you can have, and one of the worst companies. People's Trust, Security First. These are all bad companies, bad policies, bad companies. Citizens. Who else? Let me think off the top of my head. I'm drawing a blank. So let me get into these special provisions. Now, the reason why they do this is to hide things, right? They're putting in additional things to make it more difficult for you to make a claim. So when I'm looking through a special provision, and the first thing I know, whoa, here we go. Cosmetic and aesthetic damage of floors. So if you have a plumbing issue, floors need to be broken into. If you have water damage, then the floors are damaged. There's a $10,000 limit. Okay? It includes, the cosmetic damage includes, but it's not limited to, chips, scratches, dents, any other damage. I mean, they should just put any damage. Unbelievable. So you've got to take a look at this because it does show various things. You know, for instance, reasonable emergency measures, right? Water mitigation. They'll pay up to $3,000 or 1%. We will not pay more than the amount unless we provide you approval within 40 hours. So again, all this is trying to limit their exposure of pain. So let's jump into, that's about it for special provisions. I don't want to go through every single paragraph, but the last part is a checklist of coverages. All right. So usually that's at the end of the policy. Not all the time. Sometimes I see it at the front. So you'll see it by this checklist of coverage. All right. It tells you what the coverages are. And then it actually goes through, sometimes, you know, go through what you have. Fire, yes. Hurricane, yes. Flood, no. Right? Accidental discharge. So if you look, so they don't have coverage on this policy for any type of water damage. Now I could go up and look at the declaration and see if there's a water damage limit, and we might be able to get around that type of thing, but it's interesting. So this is always good to come back to and take a look at. It gives you your loss of use coverage, right? Fair rental value. So if you rent your house out, Airbnb or other measures, you have tenants, you have $23,000 to cover any lost rent, if you will. Then it goes through all the debris removal and other things. Here's a mold, $10,000. Remember this first number. So here it actually is the same number. So $10,000 is the most to pay. The first number covers you, your property, your home. The second number covers others' property. So it's what we call liability, mold liability. If somebody brings stuff in, they're there for a couple weeks and their property's damaged, personal property, clothes or furniture. All right, they have $10,000. Normally this number is $50,000. Doesn't surprise me, American Integrity. So overall, whatever this person's paying is way too much because this policy is crap. So insurance companies always try to pigeonhole homeowners when they have claims, and they do that by creating technical, legal wording in their policies. Sometimes people don't know where to look at certain things, if things are covered, what's excluded, right? It's not an easy policy to go through. There's pages and pages and pages, and that's why They want it that way. They want it to be confusing. They want you to be intimidated. That's why it always baffles me when people try to handle their claims themselves. Sometimes I guess there is that situation where everything seems so clear and cut dry that the insurance companies should be paying for everything. But then you have the other half of the coin you have to worry about, their lowball estimate writing. The adjusters, field adjusters that come out on the behalf of the insurance company, they know they will not be hired back if they do not write a low estimate. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. So hopefully this policy and the little run through, Policy 101, how to understand your Policy 101 helped. Hopefully it gives you at least a little bit of idea that it doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be the boogeyman. It doesn't have to be some scary monster. You can open it up. People never open up their policy, and I get it. I get it. Before I entered into this field and the insurance world, I never did either. As a matter of fact, I don't even look at my auto policy. So that's a lot thinner. It's a lot easier. It's a totally different animal. My name's Mike with the Claim Squad Public Adjusters. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. So here's how you can get a hold of me if you have any questions or need help with a claim. Always happy to help whenever I possibly can. You'll have my cell phone here, my email, and also my website. Thanks for watching this video.